Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just really enjoying politics at the moment. It's just so much fun. Anyways, before I get on today's video, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't, join the channel, dude. Why haven't you done it already? Click the bell icon, join the channel, just get the notifications in future. Then you get more of these videos and they're just comedy gold. So let's get on to the main video of today, shall we? And the first video, I'm not even going to comment on it. Trinidad got themselves a new prime minister, and this is what they had to say.
Home invasion laws and legal firearms. And when the brutal rapists and criminals come into your homes, I tell you again, load up your matic, light them up, empty the clip.
Got to be honest and say, wish we had leadership like this in South Africa. That sounds like a good time. In any case, you may recall that last week I highlighted that India and Pakistan were not being friendly with each other, and that this basically meant that the two countries could potentially go into war. Maybe. Who knows? In any case, the Pakistani defense minister basically said that the entire conflict threatened the entire world. He said if India threatens Pakistan's existence, they'll make sure that no country survives. It's nice to see that a local, regional issue threatens all of our survival. And if you're in Britain, you're likely to see this conflict spill out onto the streets. Watch this space. Now, yesterday I did a video in which I speculated that Patrice would basically be pushed forward as the new president of South Africa. Now, if you follow the money trail, and his connections to the current presidency and the way that the government generally tends to do his dirty work, this is obvious. I could see the smile off. And what becomes interesting is that it's becoming more popular to talk about, which gives credence to the fact that, this is probably definitely going to happen. Maybe. Watch this space. Now, we've all heard about the brilliance of the NHI. NHI is going to solve the nation's problems. But you see, one of the problems that NHI is not taking into account is the lack of any humanity in some of our public hospitals. And I must admit that this video, which I'm about to show you, is actually rather difficult to watch. And in it, an individual is basically asking for help.
I demand to see a doctor, please. Listen, I demand to see a doctor. My dad is a patient in this hospital, please. I demand to see a doctor, please. Listen, I demand to see a doctor, please. This is them laughing at me now. I'm being laughed at. Sorry, sir. Are you a doctor?
Now, this is a white individual really pleading with hospitals to assist, and the staff members are laughing at her because it's funny. I'm not really sure how it's funny. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, this is the problem with the NHI. When you give the government the sole right and responsibility of managing all forms of hospitals, this is the kind of service you inevitably end up getting. You know why? Lack of accountability. Market forces have a greater level of accountability than government. Let that sink in just for 1 second. In any case, actually going then on to some really interesting news, and this is the news that the South African Council of International Relations says that basically DIRCO needs to reconsider its foreign policy. Now, it's actually really interesting to understand what's going on here. And this is that actually the pressure from Donald Trump is starting to impact these individuals such that they're all starting to consider that potentially our foreign policy can't just be, yeah, we like Iran because they paid off our debt, and we like Russia because like anti-apartheid and stuff. Like, the actual foreign policy has to be more nuanced than that. And so the actual council has suggested that our foreign policy should be realigned, and that rather than write a blanket foreign policy which says, we love these guys, they're great, there needs to be a foreign policy specific to each of the individual countries to which South Africa has relations with. And by doing that, according to the council, the recommendation is that South Africa can tailor its foreign policy to that specific nation. In other words, if we want to get more out of the US, we tailor a policy to them. I must admit, reading this article, I did think, well, don't we do that anyway? And apparently, no, we don't. We just have the ANC's basic declaration around what it says our foreign policy will be. And that's pretty much it. So this led to great surprise when, are you waiting for it? I mean, I was blown away. It was an MK party member, an MP too, who actually said that the government needs to turn its focus to the country's foreign policy, and that foreign policy should be dedicated directly to the economy. I think this is revolutionary. It's never been done in South Africa before. I think the joke is it probably hasn't. In any case, what they actually said is that, and I'm going to quote, they said, we need to ensure that every cent we spend helps us to create more job opportunities. Rwanda and several other African countries are leading the pack on the economic front. We are part of BRICS, and there is so little trade with these countries. Yeah, that's right. There's very little trade with BRICS. And it's very interesting to note that the MK party seems to understand this, specifically because of the way the rhetoric always tells us, Iran and China and Russia and wherever else. And so this MK party member goes on further to say, China is waiting on SA businesses to come and to be a part of trade shows and invest in the country. In other words, they want us to invest in China, not the other way around. So this is political suicide, as most of our trade is with the West, Europe, and the US. We need to focus on the global south again, and we need to read the political room. Our government seems more interested in cutting ribbons and holding events, and this is all 100% correct. Yes, the MK party understands. This is where your economic opportunities are. Do something about it. Refreshing. And from the MK party, I'm blown away. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, so are you. Now, talking of the MK party, I brought you news yesterday about Zondo. And if you watch that video clip from Zondo, he says, in fact, that the judiciary sent Jacob Zuma to prison. Then the executive, the government, let him out. They said that letting out was like illegal. So then they sent him back to prison for being let out on an illegal basis. And they said, well, the executive then created this amazing, like, quick pardon, which they were led to believe that this was just all magically planned and it allowed Jacob Zuma to go free. And Zondo says, yeah, we're not stupid. We know exactly what you did. We sent him to prison, you let him free. And this becomes interesting because you see the MK party is ramping up its attack on the judiciary, whereby they're saying they would now like lifestyle audits on all the judges because they want to see how many of them are corrupt. Now, according to Jacob Zuma, he says the Constitutional Court specifically is a load of puppy rubbish. And he says that what he wants to occur is that actually we need to change ourselves from a constitutional democracy to a parliamentary sovereignty democracy. In other words, Parliament has the final say. And this means that, effectively, if the ANC wanted to roughshod some really shoddy legislation through, well, you just have to say, well, Parliament can do it at once. Now, it's interesting that Jacob Zuma would take this approach because this is actually what South Africa had during apartheid. And this is why the atrocities of apartheid were able to be committed. Because of parliamentary sovereignty. That's why we have a constitution. Yes, these people have short memories, eh? Well, in terms of Jacob Zuma, actually should be a long memory. I mean, he's been around for a while. In any case, let's get on to one of the main stories of today. And this is actually me fact-checking Julius Malema. So yesterday, I brought you the news that Julius Malema got banned from the United Kingdom, and this is after his visa application was denied. Now, Julius Malema is supposed to have gone to the United Kingdom to address Cambridge University, and he was going to go speak at a conference basically around African history and slavery and, all the things that Julius Malema really likes to get involved in. In any case, he didn't get the visa. Now, Julius said that this was all a coordinated ploy by the British High Commission to exclude him from the United Kingdom. And actually, the exact comments of the EFF to his supposed ban is worth repeating, and it says, the EFF is well aware that this is a reflection of the attitude of imperialism against the Commander-in-Chief and the EFS, who have been a strong and critical voice against the United Kingdom for its roles in the atrocities of colonialism, particularly the role of the British monarchy in the slave trade, its role in the sustaining of the genocide of the Palestinian people by Israel, and the continued resistance by Britain regarding the paying of reparations to victims of colonial conquest. Yeah, so much to unpack in this, just could take forever. Let's quickly do it. Let's not spend all day on this. It was actually the British who ended the slave trade. Just saying, it was also the British who freed a lot of the American slaves, not just through a war. Remember, they fought a war over this. But they actually paid a lot of landowners to allow slaves to go free. The actual event nearly bankrupted England. But, history, eh? It's not always Juju's strong point. I'll tell you what's also not Juju's strong point. Politics. And the reason I say this is because actually he wasn't banned. What actually happened is that Juju did what many of these individuals do. He submitted his paperwork late. And the British High Commission said, look, the granting of a visa isn't actually down to us. It's down to the Home Office. And you haven't given the Home Office enough time to process the application in order to actually get you a visa. And so that's why they denied it. They said, had you actually processed it and done it in a longer time period, we would have just been able to process it. And you know what? Like, the Brits, being the Brits, they even apologized. They said, we really regret that we aren't able to do this. Really sorry. And we'll try to do better and we'll see if we can help you out. But I do also think that this is the case of the Brits being the Brits. When everybody's like swearing and shouting at you and calling you imperialists and what, be like, oh, terribly sorry. Let's see if I can get your visa passed. Anyway, it's a very interesting story because, again, we see this in government all the time, right? Why does government lose most of their court cases? Yeah, it's usually procedural, because procedure to some of these individuals is something that other people do, not what they do. Anyway, coming on to the final news story of today, and this is that the PAC facilitated a talk between the Afrikaner Leadership Network, specifically made up of Solidarity and AfriForum, and they had a meeting with the ANC. And apparently the news is that, in a quote, the PA says there was blood on the walls and blood on the floor, and they had a big, huge, contentious Barney over, the Bella Act, expropriation without compensation, and a quote, untruths around farm murders and the US-SA relations. In other words, the refugee offer. Apparently, according to the news article, the actual debate went on for 4 hours. They screamed at each other for 4 hours, and they were frequently told, please stop screaming at each other. The ANC was criticized by AfriForum for its role with Iran and Hamas, and AfriForum was basically criticized for, spreading lies around farm murders and persecution against Afrikaners. Well, long story short, the two actually did say that they had a lot of disagreements, and the PAC was asked why they even bothered. And the PAC said, we know internally that quite often we have disputes with ourselves, but the disputes are exasperated by the media, and when we actually talk to each other, we actually have more in common than we have against each other. And they said that this was probably going to be the case between the ANC and the Afrikaner network. Now, all the news is that basically the meeting was constructive. Now, what does constructive actually mean? We don't know. No one's talking about it. Very strange. They've all said they had a meeting. They screamed and shouted at each other. They all understand that they need to work with each other for the betterment of the country, but that's as far as it's gone. So when I know, I'll let you know. But at this point in time, it's interesting to note that they had the meeting. And I suppose that's the first start of anything positive, is just talk to each other. Anyway, these are just my opinions. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.